Hello, everybody. My name is Barbara White, and I would like to welcome you here today to this symposium. To give you a brief history, so that for those who may not really know how we started and where we are now, and those who might be listening later, back in 2014, we started our first symposium. It was live at that time. Steve Cooper from the International Pride Championships asked me to put on a symposium for women. And so we did that. We did a panel of women and men from various backgrounds and all over the United States as well as Ireland. And we just had the panel was about the contributions that women have made in Kenpo and are still making it. The panel, it consisted of women, but I said we had men as well. So we also included my late husband, Bob White. We had John Sepulveda, Master Eddie Downey. We also have now Ron Sanchez, who is here today, but he was on the panel at that time as well. Fast forward, we didn't have any symposiums at all from 2014 up till 2020 when COVID hit, and the idea to do a Zoom symposium came about. I asked Heather Flessing, who is one of our board members, to help with this first symposium. We had a panel of women and questions based on what women wanted to hear about. Two of the panelists are here today, Rebecca Knight and Denise Plowman. That got positive reviews, so very soon later, we did a second symposium. I asked Denise Plowman to come back as a panelist. We did our symposium, and at that time, I asked Denise to join Heather and me as a team to put further symposiums on. So 2020, fast forward later to today, we have 10 board members. We've had 10 symposiums. 2 have been live. 1 has been in Chile. 1 has been in Ireland. We have 6 ambassadors now representing us from Ireland, Kenya, Jersey, and the United States. We became the International Women of Kenpo. We have a Facebook page that now has nearly 2,000 followers. So all of this due to support and encouragement and just hard work. And thank you so much for all those who support. We have an unbelievable team, and we love what we do. Our mission statement that we would like to accomplish is to be known as a community that encourages one another to achieve collective goodwill through recognition, which we do on Facebook, inspiration, and collaboration with other martial artists, which is happening today. In 1989, Congress passed a resolution making October National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. They made that official. And since this is October National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, this is what we're talking about. I thought I would Google and see how many observations we have. Approximately per year, nationally, we have about 111 days, weeks, or months of observance. Often we don't pay too much attention. They come and go. For instance, probably you didn't know that 2 days ago was Global Cat Day. At work, we just finished Case Management Week, and we're recognized with coffee every single day, breakfast and lunches, which we completely loved and appreciated. And that came and went. However, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and also the date, November 25th, which happens to be the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, that warrants our full attention. The World Health Organization cites that 27% of women throughout the world have experienced domestic violence in their lifetime. Of all domestic violence cases, 82% are committed against women. But I didn't want to leave the men out. The National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey through the CDC cites that 1 in 10 men are victims of domestic violence. It comes in many different forms, which we'll talk about later on in this program. We have a fine group of panelists today from various backgrounds and expertise that we'll hear about. We have retired Captain Ron Sanchez from the LAPD. We have Dr. Ivan Valadivia, he was a clinical psychologist. We have Rhiannon Leppard, who is a licensed mental health counselor. And then we're going to hear from a wonderful woman Rebecca Knight, who will share her survivor's journey of hope with us. All these are martial artists, they're black belts. They train passionately and they love to be in service to others. So I'm so excited and happy to be able to be a part of this symposium and to also be able to hear what they have to say and learn from them. We have a couple of women on our board member that I'm going to introduce you to and turn this over to you. We have Heather Flessing. Heather is the co-chair and media designer for the International Women of Kenpo. She is a 4th degree black belt from Bob White's Karate Studio in Costa Mesa, California, and she has been a student of Kenpo since 2009. And now we also have Denise Plowman. She is the co-chair and social media director for the International Women of Kenpo. She is a 6th degree black belt from Boise, Idaho, who began her Kenpo training in 1994 and is part of the advanced Kenpo training system. And thank you too for all that you do for putting this symposium on for the International Women of Kenpo. And at this point, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you, Barbara. I would also like to do an introduction for Barbara, who is our chair and founder of the Kenpo Women's Symposium, who just introduced me. Barbara began her martial arts career in 1991 and is a 7th degree black belt and owner of Bob White's Karate Studio in Costa Mesa, California. So for today, I want to welcome everyone who is participating. And then for those who are joining us at a later time, because you weren't able to come to the live event, we have 4 accomplished Kenpo panelists who will be answering questions specifically for them regarding our topic today on domestic violence. Each panelist will have 2 questions they are responding to. Once they all have the opportunity to answer their designated questions, we will then open it up to the community for any questions that you may have. To ask your questions, just use the chat button in the Zoom to submit. And if you have one that's directed specifically at one of the panelists, please include their names. We thank you for joining us today and supporting the IWK team. So let's get started. I would first like to introduce one of our IWK ambassadors, Helen Keller-Sermon. After a 49-year-long career as working as a math computer science teacher, a military system designer trainer, and a financial system analyst tester, Helen retired in September of 2021 at the end of the COVID lockdown. While trying to determine what her life would be like in retirement, she was browsing through the community's activities brochure for her township in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and came across a class entitled Seniors Self-Defense Program, which was starting that same month. The program's description said it was restricted to senior citizens age 60 and above, and that taking it would help enhance the balance, flexibility, and coordination, all of which Helen felt she needed to improve, so she signed up. The lead instructor for the program is Don Leitner, a 5th degree black belt in American Kenpo Karate. Don is assisted by his current instructor, Dan Meck, who is an 8th degree black belt in American Kenpo Karate and is the co-founder and vice president of the International Brotherhood of Kenpo Karate. Also on the floor, assisting with the training of the group of about 20 seniors, are Colleen Posey and Jennifer Massey, both 2nd degree black belts in American Kenpo Karate. Both Don and Colleen are senior citizens, but Dan and Jen are the middle-aged youngsters of Helen's instructors. Helen has completed 4 years of training with Don and the Gray Dragons and 3 years of training with Dan. She now helps out with the Gray Dragons and continues studying under Dan. She is proud to say that this 73-year-old gal now has her green belt and can kick up as high as knee level. She is determined to master challenging new material and has her sights firmly set on advancing to the rank of brown belt. Helen can't thank her instructors enough for showing her that Kenpo is not just a sport, but a family, a way of life, and something in which she can grow and accomplish even at her age and skill level. She appreciates that her senseis have shown that this is not about reaching a goal, but instead is all about the journey and personal development that comes with training. So thank you, Helen, for being a part of the IWK team and also for this event. And I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Denise, and welcome everyone. This is such a privilege for me. I'm currently a new ambassador, and this is my first symposium. So again, thanks, Denise, for the introduction. It is my privilege now to introduce our first panelist, Rhiannon Leopard, who moved to Spokane, Washington, a couple of months after high school graduation in 1998. She quickly learned that women were being attacked regularly on the walking trail near her apartment, so she decided to look for a self-defense school. She walked into the Northwest Kenpo Karate and was hooked from the beginning. Growing up, Rhiannon was bullied relentlessly, and Mr. Chris Panting, the owner of Northwest Kenpo Karate, was instrumental in helping Rhiannon find her inner strength and self-confidence. She trained from 1999 until 2006, earning her third-degree brown belt. Her goal was to earn her black belt, but when she and her husband had the first of 5 children in May of 2006, she took nearly 15 years off from Kenpo. Over those 15 years, she thought often about Kenpo and missed the days of training and friendships and the challenges of martial arts. When her oldest child became a teenager, she knew it was time to revisit what brought her happiness, satisfaction, and a sense of accomplishment. Rhiannon returned to Northwest Kenpo Karate under its current owner, Mr. Kurt Becker, in June of 2020. She was hesitant to put on her third-degree brown belt because it had been so long since she trained. But Mr. Becker assured her it was not only appropriate, but welcomed. She started back at the very beginning with yellow belt techniques and worked hard to relearn all of the basics, techniques, belts, forms, and sets. 16 months later, in October of 2021, she tested for second-degree brown belt and was promoted. Mr. Becker has been such a blessing and has helped her regain her confidence in the martial arts. As a mother, Rhiannon feels it is important to equip her 5 children with skills and teach them healthy discipline and structure. She also desires for them to have other great role models in their lives. She loves that her children have embraced Kenpo, and she is truly excited for her daughters and the legacy they are already creating as future women in Kenpo. Rhiannon tested and attained her first-degree black belt in September of 2023. She is grateful for her instructor, training partners, and her family for their unwavering support. In her professional life, Rhiannon works as a licensed mental health counselor. She is passionate about helping her clients identify their strengths, develop goals, and work their way to mental wellness. She is also pursuing her PhD in counselor education and supervision. Rhiannon's other hobbies include playing the trombone, clarinet, and piano, singing alto in her church's choir, and competing in triathlons and other races. She has completed the Coeur d'Alene half Ironman, countless sprint and Olympic distance triathlons, half marathons, and a variety of other races. She has also completed the 1.76-mile-long bridge swim in Sandport, Idaho. She loves camping, kayaking, and reading a good book by the lake. Her children are her greatest accomplishment, and she feels lucky to be their mom. So welcome, Rhiannon. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Helen.
How can instructors support survivors during class, especially in sparring and physical activities?
When we're thinking about like how we support people in class, everybody comes in with their own life experiences, and often alongside that is trauma. So one of the things that I find most important is having a healthy understanding of what trauma is, how it impacts people, and the blueprint that it creates from an initial traumatic experience. Reaction patterns change considerably when trauma is processed, and so people are able to taken more adverse experiences. And when we're in sparring situations or when we're doing physical drills in class, we're essentially trying to mirror or mimic some of those situations that could occur, but also sometimes unintentionally those situations that may have occurred to them. One of the most important initial steps with students, especially new or prospective students, is asking them why they're interested in the martial arts. Why are they there? What was their motivation for seeking out martial arts training? And what are they hoping to gain from their training? Asking questions about trauma history can provide valuable insight into what they may have experienced or what they've endured. There are so many factors that determine whether or not a person will open up about trauma. And some of those factors are the level of trust they feel. And trust can be established immediately, or it can take a lot of time. Their comfort level in your school and your presence, like how you show up, how you teach, how you talk to people, nonverbal communication, all of those things. And then asking questions about, how recently has trauma occurred? So people are going to walk through the doors with different experiences and different stories that they may or may not share. Another helpful question or some helpful information is finding out if they've had counseling before. And some of these questions can be incredibly personal to ask. And so going off of, just gauging the relationship that you're building with them, this may not be a first aid question, or these may not be first aid questions, but with the relationship that we gain with prospective students and with current students, we can start to glean more about their situations. Allowing people to observe classes so that they can get a sense of how the classes run, how the instructors teach, just kind of an overall sense of what it's like to be in that environment can also help them feel supported. And pairing them up with someone who's patient, someone who's aware, and someone who's comfortable teaching can also be a way to support them as they kind of find their footing in the martial arts world. Putting people on bags initially instead of putting them with individuals and sparring immediately, or making physical contact, using bags or using pads can also be another way to introduce people into the martial arts when we're talking about sparring specifically, because it allows them to experience learning some of the techniques, learning some of the ways that we do spar, and being able to feel the contact without it being a potentially traumatic experience, bringing back some of those memories or some of those feelings and sensations that they may have felt previously. So utilizing different types of equipment, like I said, bags and pads are great. Also allowing them just to kind of ease into it, getting a feel for what the gloves are like. The shin pads, headgear, mouth guards, all of those things, so that they can take it at a slower pace and be able to build comfort as they move through the process. Another idea is talking with the person. If we know that somebody has trauma and they're coming in with some hesitation or discomfort, allowing them to create some sort of a stop signal can be helpful and also healthy. Giving them the control to say, this is too much right now, and whatever that stop signal might be, it could be eye contact, it could be a head nod, it could be putting up a hand, it could be just a finger, you need to take a step out. Something that allows them to communicate discreetly that they need to take a break, and then honoring that for them. Alongside that is following up with them to make sure that they're okay. So if they step off the mats and they've been gone for a few minutes, having somebody check on them can be a way to support them. And then as instructors, as part of my bio, one of the things that was shared is that I focus a lot on helping people find their strength And within that, that's in the counseling space, whether it's in the community, or I work in a state prison as a mental health counselor, and it's applicable there. It's applicable just as much on the mats. So being strengths-based, finding ways to support and encourage them as they're taking these steps to continue to grow and to learn. And just being willing to be vulnerable right alongside them, being encouraging, showing support, and showing empathy and just general kindness can go a long way. One thing to keep in mind is that trauma can be triggered in the like seemingly benign ways. So sparring today might be fine, whereas sparring next week might trigger them. And so having somebody pair up with them or being that instructor who is patient can be incredibly important as people are developing in the martial arts. And again, just giving them time to acclimate to the environment, acclimate to the structure, and allowing them to take it at their pace is, these are some great ways that we can help support people as they're entering martial arts and they've got some trauma history with them. One of the things that I talk about a lot with people in general, not just my clients, is Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, his book, The Body Keeps the Score, and helping people understand and recognize what it is they're experiencing if they're feeling heightened anxiety because they've been triggered by something that's happened. And there's a statement in the book that I like to quote a lot. In the book, he says, people can never fully heal without knowing what they know and feeling what they feel. And so it's just as appropriate in the Kenpo space to allow people to acknowledge their experiences and also acknowledge and name what they're feeling in that moment. And us being there to support that can only help them move forward and progress in the martial arts.
Oh, thank you, Rhiannon. Your second question deals with how can the martial arts itself empower survivors beyond physical defense?
So beyond physical defense, this is one of my favorite things about my own personal journey. As was mentioned, I was bullied a lot growing up. And when I entered Northwest Kenpo Karate with Mr. Panting and met him, he didn't know my history. It took me a bit of time to open up to him. And beyond the physical defense, that was one component of what I was learning. But the other side of it was that he poured confidence into me. Even from the very beginning, he showed and demonstrated his confidence in my skills and abilities when I didn't know that I had any of that within me. He shared his knowledge and his teaching, his level of patience helped me to build confidence. And so, alongside the physical self defense part, is also the level of confidence that can be built. I had been, prior to entering into Kenpo, I'd been in an unhealthy relationship for a couple of years. And as I said, I hadn't shared that with Mr. Panting. In fact, the person that I had been in a relationship with insisted on joining me in those Kenpo classes. Today looking back, I recognize how unhealthy that was, but at the time, it was just part of the deal. And so Mr. Panting didn't know the nitty-gritty details of my story, but he was very attuned to my lack of self-confidence and my low sense of self-worth. As I opened up and gradually shared a little bit at a time with him, he started to mentor me in different ways, picking up on what I needed to be able to feel confident each time, even so much as standing out there and testing for yellow belts. It was terrifying. So I had learned the techniques, I had learned the forms that I needed to be successful on the mats. But the other part of that was the self-confidence and just knowing that I had what it took to be able to progress through the ranks. and to be able to demonstrate my skills confidently. No matter what my rank is, there's always someone better and faster than me. And even being confident in my abilities, I recognize that and respect that. And so, empowering survivors beyond physical defense is helping them to understand that there's a lot more to the martial arts than the physical skills that we possess.
Oh, thank you so much, Rihanna, for sharing your story with us. At this time, I'd like to continue on and introduce to you our next moderator, which is Carrie Barnes. So, Carrie lives in Ohio and currently holds the rank of first-degree black belt in American Kenpo, a rank which she attained in April of 2025. Congratulations. Wow. Carrie is a mother of two and discovered American Kenpo in September of 2019 while homeschooling her children. She was looking for a physical fitness activity for their curriculum. She signed up for herself in January of 2020. Not only was she fascinated by the science and mechanics behind American Kenpo, but it was also pivotal in her health and fitness journey. She continually has a small group of women she trains with weekly. She has also participated in 2 tournaments, placing second in weapons and third in kata in her divisions. Carrie is currently training at Seabrook Martial Arts Academy and is a member of the Facet Combatives Kenpo Alliance. Her journey to black belt has led her so many amazing opportunities and has connected her with some of the most amazing people she has ever met. The knowledge and insight Carrie received from each class and seminar are invaluable. She hopes to one day be able to travel the world and connect with other female instructors to teach and train with other women in American Kenpo. In addition to her martial arts training, Carrie enjoys firearms training and sports shooting. She also plans to obtain her NRA instructor certification in 2025. Carrie's goal is to have a program focused on women's self-defense and firearms training. Her aspiration is to provide a space for mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends to train and grow together. Carrie wants to propel the next generation of women in American Kenpo forward. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you, Helen. I would like to introduce our next panelist, Dr. Ivan Valdivia. So Dr. Ivan Valdivia is a clinical psychologist with over 20 years of experience as a hospital-based practitioner, as well as a dedicated martial artist. Dr. Valdivia's clinical experience spans inpatient and outpatient psychiatry, sleep and eating disorders, borderline personality disorder treatment, perinatal mental health, workplace injury, and physical rehabilitation psychology. He currently serves at the Ottawa Hospital Rehabilitation Center, helping patients adjust to illness and injury. His doctoral dissertation examined vulnerability factors contributing to the emergence of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. In addition, Dr. Valdivia has trained in multiple martial arts since the age of 12. He earned a black sash in Wing Chun and currently holds a second-degree black belt in American Kenpo under 9th degree Master Jamie Seabrook. He currently leads the Ottawa-based North Star Kenpo group in Quebec, Canada, which is the only EPAK training group in the area. Welcome, Dr. Valdivia. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
So our first question for you is, what should instructors know about triggering environments or drills?
Okay, well, I think probably the best thing to do would be to start with defining our terms. So what is a trigger and why is that important? So I think it's important to note that as a psychologist, I kind of I deal with trauma from a very clinical, more severe perspective. So however, it is important to note that a lot of psychological conditions have a sort of basis in everyday experience. So each of us can be triggered in some way, right? So each of us has the recognition of danger in our environment. So if we encounter an animal in the field or something like this, all of a sudden we'll feel incredibly terrified. And we will have a whole cascade of physiological reactions that take place. And so we can understand triggers from this perspective. With someone who has trauma, it's a little bit more specific, less general, and is often related to their experiences in the past. So basically, in this context, then, a trigger is some sort of sensory or physical cue that makes someone remember very distressing details of a very upsetting experience that they had, probably some sort of physical or emotional traumatic experience. And there's a whole cascade of physical responses that occur that are not within their control. And so it's kind of like if we encounter like a bear in the woods and all of a sudden we're scared and we're motivated to either run away, fight, or freeze all of a sudden. This is outside of our control. And these kinds of emotions motivate us to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves. And so we can encounter this in the martial arts as well when there's some sort of situation that mimics a traumatic life event. The thing to notice about triggers, however, and traumatic life events is that traumatic life events or potentially traumatic life events are incredibly common. So the data suggests that somewhere between 70 and 90% of people have had a potentially traumatic life event over the course of their lives. The estimates on this vary a little bit. However, the prevalence of post-traumatic stress disorder is somewhere in the realm of just under 4%. And so what we know about that then is that the vast majority of people who experience trauma are resilient and are able to adapt and incorporate those memories into their narrative. So for the vast majority of people you will encounter with a history of some sort of traumatic event, this will maybe be a point of sensitivity, but not something that will shut them down. So when we're talking about PTSD, however, this is a unique situation where an individual has experienced severe trauma and they have some sort of vulnerability to experiencing some sort of decline in functioning. So there are a couple of things that we should assume as instructors of the martial arts then, and then maybe raise our consciousness to some specific situations that might be problematic for individuals with trauma. So some recommendations for instructors of the martial arts. I think the first one is that you can generally assume that trauma is present of some sort. Given the prevalence of trauma, you can safely assume that everyone around you, or pretty much everyone around you, has experienced some form of trauma. And then if you do that, there will be the awareness that perhaps some adaptation to how you do things will need to be made. And in this sense, then, we start to become trauma-informed martial artists and trauma-informed coaches. And so a whole host of other things might fall into place at that point. So the other thing that we need to assume, though, is that when someone has a reaction, when they've been triggered by some situation in the martial arts domain, whatever it might be, like hyperventilation or whether it's dissociation, which I can define if you'd like, this is not something that they're faking. This is not something that they're putting on for drama. This is not a show. This is a severe reaction that they are having. So it's important to look out for these things. Another thing to assume as a martial arts instructor is that getting consent and developing agency is extremely important. And again, this is not something that we typically do, right? So it's important to always allow people the opportunity to indicate that they are not comfortable doing something we are requesting that they do. And in fact, even the way we phrase those things, those demands that we make, we tell people what they're going to be doing. And we may or may not give them details. So slowing that whole process down is actually pretty essential, and making sure that you get consent from them and allowing them to opt out. In the grappling arts, like jiu-jitsu, there's a very easy way to do this. When you are being choked, you're put in an arm bar, an Americana or something like this, you just tap out, right? And we kind of need something like that in the stand-up arts too. We need some way for people to be able to simply say, I've had enough. That's enough for me. I'm going to stop here. So always giving people some sort of way to communicate that this is no longer something they're willing to do or able to do. The other thing you want to probably keep in mind is creating a predictable structure. So I always think about like how I was taught to do academic writing. Pardon me. The way you do academic writing essentially is tell someone what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So in that sense, what we want to be doing is giving someone, or giving the group, I should say, the plan for the class, carrying out the class, and then reviewing what you did. This helps people to sort of feel comfortable with you. There's some sort of predictability. People then can say, well, okay, so this is coming up. They're not worried about what's coming. And it allows them to opt out. And at the end, they're able to sort of synthesize this information a little bit better. And then sort of the final aspect of this part is that you should know your boundaries as a martial arts instructor. We are, most martial arts instructors are not clinicians or therapists. And so you should know basically how to refer someone on to a clinician of some sort who can handle these difficulties. So maybe having some sort of list, or at least a capacity to have access to a list, would be useful. The second thing I just want to mention is maybe some drills or environments that might be challenging for people, that might be triggering for certain individuals with a significant history of trauma. So just some things to keep in mind that might be triggering, and I'm sure these are fairly obvious, but I'll mention them nonetheless. So surprise takedowns, blind grabs, forced close contact drills, so like chokes, face-to-face clinch, especially when combined with like aggressive verbal output. Any sort of role play that mimics intimate partner violence, these would obviously potentially be triggering for people. And then kind of as Rhiannon was talking about with respect to sparring, not having clear opt-out or tap-out rules in play is probably a big no-no. And also kind of like, the chaotic, loud gauntlets, like Shark Tank or however you want to describe it, without any structure to it, without rules and again, opt-outs. So things you can do are, as you're preparing to enter some sort of drill, would be to describe it with detail, and then demo it, and then sort of allow people to see whether they're willing to do it or not, right? You can also vary up the intensity and speed. It's another option. And again, I can't emphasize this enough, let everyone know how they can opt out or tap out. This is essential. For individuals that have trauma, you can ease them into these techniques or exercises progressively by starting very low intensity, low speed, and sort of working your way up. And if you see problems along the way, you can have an off-ramp for them. You can also, as Rhiannon said, allow them to choose their partner. So you want to have them be with someone with whom they feel safe. This is quite important. And then obviously, like, there are, as I mentioned before, some particular drills might be avoided, like compressing airways, or like simulating like a sexual assault situation or something like this. Those would be pretty important. So there you have it.
Thank you very much. Your second question is, when should we recommend that someone seek psychiatric or clinical help?
Okay, pardon me. So again, I'm approaching this as a clinical psychologist, someone who makes diagnoses of PTSD and other disorders. So what I say here is kind of consistent with my practice in a hospital. And if I were to encounter someone in martial arts who I'm sort of noticing is maybe not doing well. So again, I said this before and I'll say it again, the most important thing for any martial arts instructor is competence. Competence is a really important word in my opinion. We use it a lot in psychology. And competence basically means a recognition of what we're good at and where we're not particularly skilled. And competence, like an honest competence, allows us to know where we can have effect and where we cannot. So there are areas of, like, if we're talking about competence in a martial arts domain, as Kenpoists, generally speaking, as a stand-up martial art, an empty hand martial art, we gain competence in striking. We have some level of competence with weapons, very minimal, unless we do arnis or some other weapons-based system. And we have very little to no competence on the ground as Kenpoists alone. So that being said, similarly, we need to recognize our competence with respect to people's emotional difficulties. Most martial arts instructors are not clinicians, as I mentioned before. So our job then is to notice what's happening with our students, to normalize the process of help seeking. This is important as well. So we never want to make them feel shamed or embarrassed about it. And we want to have the capacity to refer them on to someone through a list that we might have. So there are things to look out for then, okay? I'll just sort of list several things to just be on the lookout for. The first is safety concerns. So in this context, then we want to be looking out for what people are saying to us. Sometimes people will talk about wanting to die. They may talk about harming themselves. They may talk about disappearing, things like this. So that's what they say. We can also see what they're doing. There may be visible signs of self-harm, or remarks about, like, doesn't matter if I get hurt, things like this. If we see a change in their behavior, so sudden recklessness or aggression that seems out of character for them, this is something to take note of. If they start coming to classes intoxicated or high, this may be a situation for immediate referral or recommendation for that. Another thing to look out for is repeated psychological, emotional, physiological dysregulation. So if they appear as though they are extremely emotionally upset or physically aroused in some fashion, like, it looks like they're scared and they're breathing fast and probably their heart's racing and things like this. Maybe if they freeze or they panic during drills. Dissociation. So dissociation is a psychological state where someone who's experienced probably chronic repeated trauma over time basically loses contact with their immediate environment, and they are psychologically somewhere else, and so they may not respond to your cues in that moment. This is probably something you would very rarely encounter, and yet it's something associated with trauma nonetheless. So good to be aware of it. Perhaps there's some crying, trembling, shutting down for longer periods of time, reactions that do not dissipate, even though they've sort of taken a break, gone to sit down, taken a drink of water, things like this. Maybe they are describing to either you or their colleagues that they are having nightmares, flashbacks, intrusive memories, difficulty with sleep, things like this. Those are other reasons to maybe ask some questions. And then the other one would be something around the line of functional impairment. So do you notice that they're not performing as well in class anymore? Maybe they're forgetting their techniques. Maybe they are, leaving parts out or whatever the case might be. If they can't concentrate or attend well in class, they're distracted, things like this. Maybe their attendance is down. You could also look out for them saying that they can't go to work, go to school, or maintain relationships because of anxiety. And also kind of like a low level of tolerance for even minimally low levels of intensity in drills, things like that. And then finally, obviously, the other one that might cue you in is if they disclose ongoing physical violence or emotional violence in the home. These would be times where, as a martial arts instructor, you would definitely want to give them options in terms of what they could do. What I do want to say is that as a martial arts instructor, there are things that you want to avoid at all costs. So one of those is digging into the details of trauma. You want nothing to do with that. If you are not trained on how to ask someone about trauma, you could make things much worse. Mostly because you're probably going to get them, you might trigger a flashback or a dissociation, which is not fun for them at all. And also, like, you may insert some sort of opinion that is unhelpful. So you want to leave the details of the trauma well enough alone. You also do not want to promise confidentiality beyond what you can provide. So if there's a risk of harm, you should never be promising not to say anything to anyone. Strongest recommendation, don't give any clinical advice or medication advice. Again, these are outside of area of competency of a martial arts instructor typically, unless you have some sort of specialized training. So steer clear of that. And be very cautious about attitudes of lack of toughness or, needing to toughen up. This is not, having PTSD or panic attacks or dissociation is not a sign that they are characterologically weak. They have a psychological vulnerability due to an extreme situation they've been through. So those are some things to look out for and some possible ways to handle it.
Thank you very much. So next I'd like to introduce Joanne Fasano. Joanne Fasano is a first-degree brown belt at Franklin Family Karate in Franklin, Massachusetts. She started in 2015 at the age of 51 under Mr. Sean Crehan, 7th degree black belt. She loves helping Mr. Crehan with his women's assault prevention classes, and her goal is to get her black belt and to be able to run her own assault prevention classes someday. She attends all the local Kenpo seminars that she can. In July 2024, she traveled to Spokane, Washington to attend Mr. John Sepulveda's AKTS Spirit Camp, and in May 2025, she traveled to Ireland to attend Mr. Downey's European Kenpo Camp. She is honored and grateful to have met so many Kenpo leaders, teachers, and fellow students, and to be asked to be the East Coast board member for the International Women of Kenpo in July 2024. Joanne lives in Franklin, Massachusetts with her husband. Her 2 boys are now married and living nearby, and she became a grandmother this year. She is currently retired after a 32-year career in IT project management. Besides Kenpo, she enjoys hiking, golfing, skiing, beekeeping, and home renovations with her husband, as well as traveling in their camper.
Thank you, Carrie. It is my honor to get to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Ron Sanchez. I had the privilege of meeting Ron in Europe this year at the European Kenpo Camp. So, 1 second. Okay. So, Associate Master Ron Sanchez has a very extensive martial arts background and is a lethal and non-lethal use of force subject matter expert to numerous law enforcement agencies. He has an 8th degree black belt in American Kenpo, an Associate Master of the Arts, and is one of Grand Master Bob White's senior students. He also has black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Taekwondo, second degree, and TAI Karate, second degree also. Mr. Sanchez joined the Los Angeles Police Department in 1975 and retired as a senior captain with 31 years of distinguished service. His assignments included undercover, patrol, physical fitness, and defensive tactics instructor, Metropolitan Division, stakeouts, VIP and dignitary protection, detective, homicide, surveillance, internal affairs, and as the commanding officer of the Hollywood area in a myriad of administrative assignments. Upon retiring from the LAPD, Mr. Sanchez opened Veritas Assurance Group, Inc., which specializes in training and evaluating lethal and non-lethal force, high-risk audits for public safety agencies, and assisting executive management with identifying and managing their risk exposures. Mr. Sanchez served as a consultant, SME, and auditor for the consent decree between the Prison Law Office and the Sacramento County Probation Department. He is the use of force subject matter expert in engagements that include the United States Department of Justice, the California Department of Justice, and the Los Angeles and Kern County Sheriff's Departments. Other clients include the Pasadena Police Department, Oakland Police Department, Americans for Effective Law Enforcement, Los Angeles City Attorney's Office, Hollywood Business Improvement District, Los Angeles Police Command Officers Association, Calexico Police Department, the California Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, Evident Change, formerly the National Council on Crime and Delinquency, and the Napa County Probation Department. In 1996, he founded the Hollywood Police Activities League martial arts program that operates an amazing program in the heart of Hollywood and uses martial arts as a vehicle to mentor and develop inner city kids so that they can thrive and develop strong life skills. Well over 1,000 inner city kids have benefited from the program, and many of his students have achieved their black belts and prevailed in national and international competitions. More importantly, his students have achieved other personal and professional success and gone on to become teachers, attorneys, U.S. Marines, and soldiers in the U.S. Army. Associate Master of the Arts, Ron Sanchez has been inducted into several martial arts Hall of Fames, including the Masters Hall of Fame in 2007, Kenpo International Hall of Fame 2011, the United Martial Artists for Christ Hall of Fame in 2016, and the Kenpo Hall of Fame 2018. Mr. Sanchez is a published author, and his most recent publication is The Watchman, 12 Irrefutable Principles of Physical and Spiritual Defense. So welcome, Ron. And my first question for you is, from a law enforcement perspective, how can involvement in martial arts impact women who are victims of abusive relationships?
Well, thank you, and thank you very much for the introduction. So sadly, still in the shadows of modern society, which is often concealed behind closed familiar doors, there still reigns a battle of intimidation and control that results in emotional, psychological, spiritual, and physical abuse. So this is the reality of domestic violence in our societies. It's a most often concealed form of violence that shatters lives, leaves its survivors and their children with profound trauma, emotional, physiological, and psychological scars. I'd like to report that it's going down with the increased education that we got throughout the world, but it's not. Not long ago, the United Nations, a subcommittee of the United Nations, published a report that documented that since the COVID-19 pandemic, violence against women has dramatically increased and is now at record levels throughout the world. Recently, the American Journal of Emergency Medicine has stated that domestic violence cases have increased by over 26%. And the reasons they cited in that publication are not limited to mental health issues, financial pressures, isolation, alcohol, and drug consumption. The associated pain that's caused by domestic violence and emotional scarring can permeate the very heart and soul of those that are trapped in the clutches of this cycle. It surpasses, and it's much more than what is seen, and it's unbelievably detrimental to the victim and the victim's families and children, and can often result in homicide and suicide. What's really frightening is that exacerbating an already horrific situation, women that are already experiencing mental health challenges, that suffer from depression or anxiety or forms of potential or PTSD or other mental health issues, are up to 7 times more likely to become the victim of a domestic violence situation. So for those trapped in this insurmountable task, finding and breaking the cycle can seem almost impossible. And to break that task requires courage and hope and strength and support to empower domestic violence victims to break the cycle. So if we look at this from a martial arts perspective, how in all of this darkness can a progressive and proactive and well-informed martial arts program offer a glimmer of hope to stop this cycle of violence? So traditionally, martial arts academies are known for teaching self-defense. But as much as I love and specialize in teaching core combatives and self-defense, to be effective in the arena of domestic violence, the martial arts academy has to be much more than a place of learning self-defense. It has to be the beacon of hope and of refuge and of strength and of support and encouragement. So let's first discuss a situation where you suspect domestic violence is occurring at the moment. You need to accept that just the fact that the victim of domestic violence situation is coming to a martial arts studio is a positive step. And they're seeking help and they're seeking support. You need to be alert of any indicia of domestic violence. That could be manifested in a variety of ways: change in behaviors, low levels of self-esteem, isolation, any indication of control, any indication of humiliation and degradation. Normally we'd say bruising, but being that we're talking about martial arts, I'll add unexplained bruising, changes in personality, depression, rationalization for being the victim, and self-blame. Be prepared and expect a fear of involving outside intervention, but in almost every case that has to occur to have a successful outcome. Ask questions and actively listen. You need to show unwavering support. The victim of an ongoing form of domestic violence should separate from the abuser. His or her life, it's almost always a female, but on occasion it can be a male, is actually in danger. You need to understand that if you're telling somebody that they need to separate from an abuser, particularly if there's children, there's financial pressures and strains, you need to be aware of resources, women's shelters, support systems, church and faith-based systems, and I would encourage you to report it to law enforcement. So the goal of the martial arts instructor in this, from my perspective, is to get the victim on a journey of becoming whole again, of being a friend, being a resource, proposing resources, involving law enforcement, providing resources with domestic violence hotlines and domestic violence support groups, women's shelters, psychological support, make inquiries if they're involved in any type of faith-based church, synagogues, churches, and those are great places for resources. So that's if you have a situation where you suspect that there's ongoing domestic violence. So let's talk now about for domestic violence survivors. All right. So for domestic violence survivors, martial arts can offer a vehicle for them to rebuild their lives, to regain self-confidence, to recover from the physical and emotional and psychological turmoil that they've endured. One thing that I've noticed in my well over 50 years and studying the martial arts is that a great martial arts coach is an agent of change. And there's no greater need than being an agent of change when you're dealing with somebody that has had a traumatic history that is impacting who they are. So martial arts instruction can provide a sense of structure and stability and support. Through teaching and learning martial arts, a coach who is also a friend and a mentor can help students develop self-confidence and personal growth. The positive feedback that is provided by a martial arts coach can transform spirits and result in newfound confidence, perspective, and internal growth. For abuse survivors, Kenpo provides a structured and detailed learning environment, which is really important. It establishes a process that a student can go step by step through the curriculum and develop confidence and forward progress as they reach achievable goals. And when they reach milestones like belt promotions, those things are incredibly valuable in building confidence and self-esteem and need to be really, really supported. Each new technique and each new skill that is learned needs to be celebrated, but you need to be realistic. This is going to be a journey that takes a long time. In martial arts, a good coach, a good instructor teaches their students how to overcome obstacles. And when we're overcoming obstacles at our martial arts academy, that process teaches us how to overcome obstacles in life. So as you walk alongside and love and care and coach domestic violence survivors, you create an environment where they can find the tools and techniques to not just survive, but to thrive. Soon what I've seen is the students will begin to embrace their progress. That will result in a sense of control that has been previously lost. And that newfound sense of control can be very, very empowering. And an empowered person is much less likely to be the subject of violence. A great coach can, in training the martial arts, can create an environment that illuminates the path for a victim to leave that behind and become strong and to become supported and to understand that they're no longer a victim, but they're in a position of power to take care of themselves and their loved ones. I will close with this, as violence should always be a last resort. You have to be very realistic when you're doing an assessment if you're teaching someone self-defense. Your approach to dealing with domestic violence survivors and victims has to be holistic. And ultimately, your goal as a martial arts leader and coach and trainer is to get the student on a road to empowerment and to develop their confidence, to show them that they could achieve whatever they put their minds to support them on their journey towards completeness. So that's the end.
Thank you, Ron. Kind of a follow-up. So, and when you teach the inner city kids, is their strong life skills? Is there maybe something you would recommend that be taught to kids before to help prevent them from getting into an abusive relationship to begin with? So, since it's so hard to get out of.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. So 2 nights ago, Thursday night, we had a celebration in Hollywood for they called it the pioneers of the program that we started in 1996. And it's still going and thriving. There's the programs grew where it's not just martial arts, it's martial arts and that's a variety of martial arts. It's karate and judo and jiu-jitsu now. We have mentorship, we have college scholarships, we have a whole league of soccer teams, we have marathon running teams. And I had the privilege of providing or doing a speech and giving an award to one of my black belt students. That he's 21 years old, and I've been teaching him actually since he was 4. And so, yeah, I mean, the martial arts journey, particularly with inner city kids, because a lot of them have come from true disadvantaged families. You know, if you take a lot of kids, they're wondering about when they're going to get their new iPhone. That's not the case with my students. They're wondering if they're still going to have a roof over their head and they're going to have food to eat and a meal. And a lot of them do come out of impoverished backgrounds and some dysfunctional homes. And then a lot of my students are not lawfully within the country, so there's a fear of law enforcement. And how martial arts becomes an active part of that is, you know, in the way of, to me, teaching someone self-defense and karate or jiu-jitsu or judo, whatever art you're in, that's a vehicle that we use to get the person on the road to becoming a strong, confident member in society, where they realize that any time when we teach somebody something, they reach those goals. We teach them that if they put their focus of intention on their goals, they'll achieve it. So with my kids, I always tell them, dreams don't come true. And whenever I say that, people go, ah. You know, so dreams are just things that you dream about or sleep or think about. You know, goals, when you align your actions with your goals and you consistently keep your actions aligned with your goals, those things become true. Those aren't dreams. Those are progressive steps to reaching a desired goal. So with inner city kids, but with anybody actually, when you, as a coach, if you could get them to align their actions with their goals and celebrate every time incrementally that a step is achieved, you're teaching them that they have value. You're teaching them that they could achieve their desires. And so the progress of walking somebody through all those steps from white belt up to black belt makes somebody a complete and whole person. If you look at what the basic term for Shodan, okay, way back in the day in martial arts, the term, because there wasn't women in it. So God bless you guys for doing what you're doing. But the term actually means a complete man. So now we'll say it's a complete person. So the goal, when you get somebody in an extended period of time and you give them the spark to learn and to create and to achieve, is for them to become complete. So yeah, with inner city kids, when getting them to feel that they could achieve their goals by aligning their actions and their activities with their desires, you give them a sense of confidence. And a person that is confident, that knows they have a sense of achievement, is far less likely to become a victim. And that should be our goal as teachers.
Great. Thank you very much for your insight. I'm going to turn it over now back to Barbara White.
Thank you, Joanne. I've thoroughly enjoyed this so far. That's my quick input. This has just been wonderful. Such an education. I now have the privilege of introducing a woman who I've gotten to know throughout the years. As I said before, she's been on our panel a couple times. She and her husband have been to our studio to teach. I can call her a friend. I am so happy to be able to introduce this inspiring woman who trains passionately and just loves what she does, Rebecca Knight. Rebecca Knight's childhood was difficult at best. She grew up in a religious cult in Mexico and endured physical, mental, emotional, and sexual abuse for the first 10 years of her life. After moving back to the United States when she was 10 years old, she found that it was nearly impossible for her to trust anybody, and that was including herself. She struggled with self-esteem and confidence in every situation, and she doubted that she could ever recover from the trauma that she had endured. Rebecca attended her first Kenpo lesson in 1996 and immediately felt something that she had never felt before, and that was a small and delicate sense of worth, which grew over the years to an overwhelming feeling of confidence and strength. The feeling that was cultivated in her is why she trains and why she teaches. She desires to see that bloom in the hearts of students that she works with as well, and to show each and every one of them that what they are truly capable of doing, that they are truly capable of doing anything that they put their mind and heart into. Rebecca says she teaches because of the following reasons. She has the ability to encourage positive change. She has room for creativity. She is challenged. She can see improvement in herself and others. She can encourage respect and discipline, and she can share her passion for the martial arts with others. She was proud to have been included in the Kenpo Continuum by Amy Long in 2008 and was featured in the Kenpo Women website. In 2012, she is most humbled by her inclusion as an honoree in Tom Bleeker's The Journey, Book 3, American Kenpo's Next Generation. She and her husband own and operate Night Method Kenpo in Tucson, Arizona, and celebrated their school's 24th anniversary in September of 2025. Congratulations. They are grateful for their Master Council members that guide and have guided them in the martial arts, in business, and in their daily lives. And these are Sigun Stephen Labounty, rest in peace. Senior Master of the Arts, Bob White, rest in peace. John Sepulveda, and Senior Master of the Arts, Lee Wedlake. So thank you, Rebecca, for coming on today. It's so appreciating and looking forward to hearing your story.
Yes, ma'am. I just want to interject. I definitely consider you a friend and a mentor in the martial arts and in life. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. All right, here you go. Are you ready for your first question? Okay, how did martial arts help you in your healing process, physically, mentally, or emotionally?
Well, I want to say martial arts didn't just help me, it was the key ingredient. I went through the process. I did go through counseling as a young teenager. Music was one of the things that I first started with to kind of learn self-expression, which is something I didn't have. And both of those helped me, and they were tremendous. But martial arts was the thing. It was the thing that I was waiting for. And I actually started because one of my siblings started the martial arts first. And I saw the changes in her. I saw her level of confidence. I saw her level of decorum shift. I saw things that I wanted to have within myself, but I hadn't quite found yet. My childhood was a place where I didn't have any power and I didn't have any choice. And martial arts training gave me both. Living in compounds, I didn't have any control or choice over my physical safety. I couldn't control where I was, who was around me, and what kind of environment I might face on a daily basis. There was physical, sexual, and emotional abuse daily, whether it was inflicted on me or on my family members, my siblings. Watching it happen or knowing it was happening was simply enough to be really a difficulty for me as I was growing up. And I had 7 brothers and sisters, so it was a lot within that struggle. In between the compounds, we would travel by what we called faith, meaning we had no money, we had no resources, so we would beg for gas to get to the next town. We would beg for a place to stay, or else all of us would end up in an 18-foot travel trailer with not really much other than a roof over our heads. We'd beg for food. And if we didn't find success in begging for food, we'd dig through trash cans. We would rummage. So there was not a lot of room for hope or power to be felt. When I started my martial arts training, first was the physical empowerment, as mentioned in my bio, that little small sense of self-worth. Getting to a neutral bow, establishing my base, knowing I could stay on my feet. I know it sounds simple, but to me it was huge. Putting power to target, learning proper form, breathing, knowing I could hit something, generate power. It was all these little things that weren't cultivated within myself, which was, I am worthy of something. I'm not just a tool for other people to use. Now, within that, I also had to know that these basics that I was applying in the air on a target and feeling that personal empowerment applied to protecting myself. And in order to do that and to really bridge that gap, I had to find value within myself to be worth defending. There's a great quote from Rory and Gracie that I bring in class often, which is self-defense begins with the knowledge that you're worth defending. I wasn't worth defending when I was a child, and I had to learn that that was something within my young adulthood, and now that I can enact. I've had amazing coaches, as we mentioned, over the years. I've been blessed with wonderful teachers. My very first teacher, Mr. Jace Waite, which I'll mention a little bit more later, the great Kenpo coaches, and my husband, who's been my instructor for the last 23 years, who has really been pivotal and played a key role in helping me find my confidence and my power in my adulthood. But Seagung Stephen LeBounty is who I'd like to focus on for just a moment. We met him in 2006. We courted him. We asked many times. He formally accepted us in 2009, and we were his students till he passed away in 2020. But the reason why I bring him up is he has relevant experience. He was a police officer, and he worked in crimes against women and children that involved physical and sexual assaults. And he reminded us that there's no winners and losers. We talk about a chess match. There's a winner and a loser. We talk about a sparring match. There's a winner and a loser. In a self-defense or domestic violence type of scenario, there's victims and there's survivors. And it's not just physical, it's mental and it's emotional. And Seagung would often close out his workshops with a quote that I've adopted on the regular, which is, "Not me, not today." And he would talk about it wasn't the physical strength of the people that were in those situations. It was their mental fortitude, that it didn't matter what was happening to them physically. They were not going to be a victim. They were 100% going to survive. And they had chosen that ahead of time. So it wasn't just the physical strength that I gained and the confidence, but it was understanding that I could stand up for myself for the first time. I did have the power, and I ultimately did have that choice. It's something I still struggle with from time to time. We had Seagung out on the regular for workshops in our school, and he would use me as one of his ukes, and he was working a ground technique where I was on the ground, and he was hovering over me. He was working defenses and, working angles and things like that. And suddenly in the middle of the workshop, he stops and he changes what he's doing. We move on to something else. Later on that day, he asked to speak with me privately, and he apologized to me. He called me Miss Rebecca. He goes, "Miss Rebecca, I saw something in you I never want to see again. I saw fear in your eyes. I was hovered over you. You were vulnerable on your back. You were willing to participate. But I saw the fear, the same that I saw in the people that I worked with when I was a police officer, and I never want to put you in that position again." And I thought for a second, and I love Seagung with my whole heart, and he was trying to protect me and save me. But I told him, this is why I'm here. If I can overcome that fear in an environment where I know people love me, people respect me, they're here to serve me, they're here to help me, I can overcome it in any environment. So I begged him to not remove that opportunity for me to get outside my comfort zone just a little bit and to learn and to grow and understand that fear no longer has a hold of me. I have a hold of it. So it gave me those options. Now, emotionally, again, key, pivotal. In the martial arts school, it was the first environment where I was given respect. It wasn't demanded of me, it was mutual. And it wasn't just the sirs and the ma'ams, it was the way I was treated. It was the way I was treated physically, it was the way that people approached me with the hands-on, it was the way that they managed how I struggled in class, not really knowing where I was coming from. I also built friendships. In my childhood, relationships were not to love or support people, they were to use them. What could you get out of them? And for the first time, I saw that people valued me for me as a person, not for what I could do for them. So it taught me how to have those real connective relationships. I was homeschooled, so I didn't really have a social environment. So karate fortunately gave me that opportunity, and it was one of the best ones I could have ever asked for. And building physical self-defense on that other side of it, it forced me to ask the question, how am I defending myself emotionally? And the answer was, not as well as I would like. So it created awareness to create better emotional boundaries. and reading sooner where people are taking advantage of me and I'm not really seeing it and I'm not putting those boundaries in place. I defend myself against a punch. Would I defend myself against an emotional attack? Again, going back to, am I worthy of defending? And if that answer is yes, it should be yes in that same scenario as well. Seagung also echoed this quote often, I will not go where I'm not wanted, and I will not stay where I'm not respected. So reading that room, understanding the environment, only being in places where I know that I have respect, that martial arts school environment that I grew up in and we create here today was definitely important. And then we remember the most powerful word in the English language when it comes to respecting ourselves, next. You don't have to stay there. Move on. Create an environment. Go where you're wanted, as Seagung said. I'm proud to say that I have been sober for 7 years, physically, but emotionally it's been a challenge, kind of addressing the things that caused me to run to alcohol as an outlet. It was a lot of the struggles that I was still not addressing just yet. But being out of the physical environment of drinking, I have to address the emotional side of it and those key triggers. Being out of that physical environment of abuse, I need to make sure I stay out of that victim mentality. And martial arts has given me that ability to know that I'm worth defending, stand up for myself, and it's really the most important part of my healing process.
Thank you, Rebecca. You know, I wonder if Mr. Labani was alive today and he heard how many times in women's self-defense we echo, not me, not today. He would be so proud.
He would love it.
So proud. What an accomplishment in so many ways. And those other quotes of his, I wrote them down. I love it. So the next question. So how has your personal experience shaped the way you teach Kenpo today?
It has given me a tool that I can use. I'm going to quote two things. My husband, he says, the depth of your struggle is equal to the height of your reach. So whenever I'm lamenting about the things that happened to me, and I struggle with that from time to time, he reminds me, you have a superpower. You can see that within others. A simple way of saying it is turn your scars into stars. So I'm going to choose to see that positive and use it as a tool. Because of my childhood trauma, I learned to read people really well. And that was kind of a safety mechanism. If I could read how the adults around me felt, I could semi-control whether I was safe or not. But that has allowed me to also read my students. I can't read their minds. I can't tell what trauma they face, but I can tell that they're struggling. So because I can see some of those, micro expressions, or more than likely than not, it's what they're not doing versus what they are doing, lets me know that there's something that they're struggling with that I can help them. One of the things I do is seek to understand if there's a reason why they're not engaging. Some of the other panelists did a great job of addressing they're not lazy, they're not trying, they're probably traumatized, they're probably triggered, they're probably something they're going through. And if I can see from that perspective, I can be a better coach to them. Always praise them when they come into the school. Sometimes, I'll say often, the martial arts school is the only positive environment that people are in, whether it's a kid that deals with negativity at home or mean teachers at school or bullies, whether it's adults that have a toxic work environment or a bad relationship. They walk into the karate school and they're looking for that positivity. And I feel proud that that's something that we get to offer them. So we always find something they're doing right first, and of course, make those little adjustments along the way. The other thing is working at the student's comfort zone, but always building a bridge to the next level. I don't want to hold them back by saying, you're comfortable here, let's stay here. But if I understand why they're uncomfortable, I can start to build a bridge to what that next step is. The reason why I understand that is I was that kid. And when I first started training, Mr. Waite was my first teacher, and he was the perfect teacher for me. And I emulate him, honestly, in the way that I address my students that are struggling the same way that I was. I didn't want to ki. I didn't want to bring attention to myself. It made me feel like if I called attention to myself, I would be victimized in some way, shape, or form. And every time I did a stripe test or a belt promotion, he'd quietly come up to me and he'd go, okay, you're at the next belt. Are you going to ki yet? I'm setting this goal for you. Finally, it was my favorite color, purple. And my purple, I had to yell. And now I make sure my students do the same thing because I see the value in it, calling attention to the situation, putting your power into it, using your voice. But he was kind and patient with me, and so I choose to pass that along to my students as well. Kind of a cool fun fact, Mr. Waite is my student and has been for quite a while now. He took a break in his training, and on and off for about 15 years, he's been training with us as well as some of his kids. And in a strange coincidence, my husband also teaches his first teacher. So we love how these things come full circle and keep it all in that Kenpo family. So I also want to mention that it's also helped me give base needs to my students, whether they're dealing with trauma or not. My favorite class to teach is the 4 to 6 year olds. I think we have the same mentality. We're practically the same height, so I can relate to them. They can relate to me. And I've been teaching that program for going on about 23 years, 24 years now. But what I found is it's in its simplest, most embryonic form. If I want to get respect, I have to give it. So if I wanted my littles to listen to me, I had to listen to them first. So they all get like a minute or two before class to share something where the whole class stops. They have full respect of the group. And then once they get a chance to share, they have to let everyone else share. And then once everyone else shares, it's time to listen to the teacher. So I choose to give it first, then ask for it. And I think that helps me be a better coach to the littles and support their learning process as well.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Just thank you for your words of wisdom, experience and wisdom. Thank you so very much. Okay, at this time, I'm going to bring Denise Plowman back on.
Thanks, Barbara. Awesome input from all of the panelists. We've reached the part of where we're doing the Q&A. And so I have one question for each of the panelists I will call on, and we're just looking for a short answer to our final questions for this event. So I will first start with Ivan. If you can turn your camera on. Can you identify how can martial arts help and when can it hurt someone dealing with trauma?
I think what a great connection to what Miss Rebecca was saying about Sigung La Bounty. I think when you're lucky enough to have an instructor like Sigung, sounds like he was, his ability to simply look into your eyes and know that something was not right. That's a unique skill, I think, an interpersonal skill, an emotional intelligence that is absolute gold. And so, obviously, not every martial arts instructor will have that. And you can imagine at the same time how useful that would be. So, connecting to that, then, how can it help? So, first is reclaiming the body. So, sometimes it's the case that people with trauma feel disconnected from their bodies. Developing the physical skill of the martial arts can help you sort of gain that sense of this body is mine. Restoring agency. The more that we accomplish in any domain, particularly the martial arts and so on, we can feel as though we're in control of our destiny. We can feel powerful. We can feel as though we have the capacity to achieve in life. This is something that's very useful. Obviously, community and well-being is essential. So I think one of the most important things the martial arts can give us is that sense of connectivity, a shared experience, mutual support, these kinds of things. Invaluable. The positive neurochemicals that are generated in terms of emotional and social connectedness is immeasurable. Self-regulation. So just the mere capacity to motivate yourself and stay dedicated to a practice is incredibly useful. It adds structure. And when you're dealing with some sort of psychological disorder, whether it be an anxiety disorder or a trauma-related disorder or whatever the case might be, everything feels kind of chaotic and out of control. And adding the structure of learning a system, especially like something as gargantuan as American Kenpo, this can provide a tremendous amount of structure and control into your life. And then the final would be identity reconstruction. So rather than sort of like just saying that you're a victim or you are an abuse survivor or something, you can actually say something on the positive side, that you are a martial artist. And I think being able to say what you are in a positive sense can give a great deal of stability to your sense of self. And this can't be overemphasized, I think, when it can hurt. So obviously having uninformed instructors, so the opposite of what Miss Rebecca described in Seagung. This is obviously of great detriment. If someone is kind of like has a suck it up mentality, if they're unwilling to help you emotionally or just sort of a bull in a china shop, this can be quite harmful to an individual with trauma. Unmodulated drills, so any drills that are kind of uncontrolled, chaotic, perhaps well-meaning in the sense of like wanting to teach someone how to defend against like a sexual assault or something like that, that it has its risks associated with it beyond the physical. Obviously, there are emotional risks that come along with that. And concomitant or in combination with the previous two, the authoritarian culture that we often engage in. This is obviously, something that's inherent to the martial arts and probably to some extent is required. And even so, there are some perhaps like tendencies to humiliate others at times, to put someone on the spot, generates lots of fear and shame. And, that's difficult for any person to endure. But when you add trauma and perhaps PTSD into the mix, then it becomes quite a burden to deal with. The over-identification with toughness also is particularly damaging. So, rather than sort of like saying that I want to build up an armor, we also need to build up our capacity to tolerate vulnerability and healing. So there's that side of it too. We don't want to just be tough and perseverant. We want to also be vulnerable and willing to look at the emotions that we're experiencing as well. So that's what I would say about that.
Thank you, Gavin. Next up, Rebecca. What advice would you give to other survivors who might be considering martial arts?
I would say absolutely do it. But there would be three factors that I would most definitely consider. Is find the right environment. There's a lot of karate schools that don't support, that aren't aware, and you probably will know walking in, just trust your gut. That's something you have to learn to do as a survivor. So kind of watch the environment, see how people treat each other, see how the class runs. A couple other panelists had mentioned go watch a class. I 100% agree. Go to multiple schools and find the one that just feels comfortable and right and respectful to you. Then also make sure you find the right art. I'm lucky enough to have started in American Kenpo. I have some experience in other styles, just in seminars and such. And this is tremendous for someone of any size to be able to defend themselves. I'm on the petite side. So if it works for me, it works for anyone. So find the right style that's practical, and that will give you the skills that you need. A bad style or bad advice is incredibly detrimental. I have a quick story to share. My husband worked as a prison guard. And he was always on the team for the forced cell extractions. He had an opportunity to train his Kenpo a little bit. It was a win-win. And he had coaching at the time from someone who taught him his knife edge kicks with a stomp down, even on the back of the knee. So he had bad coaching. He did that stomp on the back of the knee. The guy fell, took his ankle with it. They both ended up on the ground in the cell, which was not ideal. So you want to make sure you have the right people giving you the right advice. And then the last and the most important thing is be patient with yourself, because it's not going to be easy. Beginning of my martial arts training, I would often find myself running off the mats, having panic attacks, full-on panic attacks, splotches on my body, head to toe, profusely sweating, because I was outside my comfort zone trying to move to that next step. So be aware, if you have the right school with the right environment, you have a good style, you stay patient with yourself, this could be one of the most important things you do in your journey. I say 100% go for it.
Thanks, Rebecca. Rhiannon, what does trauma-informed mean in a martial arts context?
I love this question. Trauma-informed in the martial arts context is trauma-informed by itself is recognizing the impact of trauma on individuals, emphasizing creating a safe environment. It's a strength-based framework that focuses on understanding and responding to the effects of trauma, ensuring physical, psychological, and emotional safety. Empowering people to prevent re-traumatization by acknowledging their experiences and fostering a supportive environment. Those are all key elements of trauma-informed. In the martial arts context, understanding trauma and its impact is incredibly important. We're literally teaching people how to hit and how to be hit, how to fight and be defensive. We're teaching them a new language with metaphors and potentially deadly application. Being trauma-informed in martial arts means approaching each class with a heightened awareness and conscious focus on each student. Trauma-informed means not throwing our students into the deep end and yelling at them to swim when they don't know how to tread water. It means being patient, asking questions, listening with genuine care and empathy, and teaching them at a pace that they are comfortable with learning. It means not taking on more than you can handle. Competence is key, as Dr. Valdivia mentioned earlier. Not working or operating outside of your scope and turning it over to experts. So as mentioned, there aren't many practitioners who are also mental health, trained in mental health, licensed clinicians. And so being willing and able to stay within your scope, operate within your scope, and turn it over to the experts kind of rounds out a nice trauma-informed environment for the students.
Thanks, Rhiannon. Our final question for Ron. From the sounds of it, you have a very successful community programs outside of the studios or the schools. Can you provide some advice to schools who might want to reach out in partnership with the law enforcement or those other programs out in the community to create maybe some programs in partnership with the domestic violence at their schools?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They should probably reach out to. Well, say that again. I lost that. To create domestic violence programs at the schools, or for the school to support domestic violence programs run by the department.
Well, yeah, either way, if they wanted to bring them in or if they wanted to be partners with the community, whether it be at their school or whether it be in the community, how they might be able to get involved in those types of activities.
Yeah, I would, when I was the commanding officer of the Hollywood Division, and most people have a different view of Hollywood when it actually is. So it's a very eclectic community. It's very diverse. There's on the east end of the division, there's a very Orthodox Hasidic Jewish area. There's a Russian area. There's a Hispanic area. There's a Korean area. So it's just like the proverbial salad bowl of different kind of cultures. And so, we, like any other area, we had we had domestic violence issues. I mean, I had 5 people that's all they worked was domestic violence cases. And what we did is we formed a domestic violence subcommittee of service providers in the community. So we had some of the people that were involved, they're all volunteers. Some of the people that were involved were faith-based. We had support services from psychological providers where they provided psychological support. We had resources from shelters and other financial resources for it was mostly women that were the subjects of domestic violence. And so we formed that subcommittee, and part of that there was martial arts folks involved in it. So if someone had an interest in doing that, what I would suggest is they contact the police department or a sheriff's department, find out if they have a domestic violence subcommittee. If not, talk to the domestic violence investigators or to the community relations component of the department and offer to be involved in it. That would benefit the service providers, but it also might have a very positive benefit of being able to get trauma victims into martial arts training, which I think is obviously very, very an incredible component of someone becoming whole again. So that would be my advice.
Thank you, Ron. Well, this kind of concludes our event. I'm going to bring Barbara back on for closing remarks. And before everybody signs off after Barbara is done, we like to get a group picture. So if you could stay on and let Heather do her magic before you sign off. When Barbara's done, turn your camera on so we can see all those smiles and put them on our picture for this event. Barbara?
You, Denise. I want to thank you again to everybody that participated as far as the viewers are concerned, and so much gratitude to our staff of our board members and to our panelists who spent so much time and of their time and their expertise to devote to this. And I took a ton of notes, and I was going to write down like what I thought was the big aha moment or the big idea. And I found that I wrote down a whole bunch of big ideas. And so I just found this so worthwhile and so informative. I'll share a couple of the big ideas that I had. And, I took out empathy and awareness as something that could make me a better teacher. It's all how could I better myself? I like the idea of going into your studio and approaching your martial arts training as knowing that you're doing more than self-defense. You are fostering hope, support, and encouragement. Several times I heard about resources. I think it's valuable for all schools, including ours, which we'll do, to post resources and have those available at our school. So many great ideas, so much insight. I truly appreciate all that you've done and how you've shared, and look forward to seeing everybody at the next symposium. Have a good day and a good weekend.